Questions and Answers session. Question 1. Estimate at completion, or EAC, is a periodic evaluation of A. The cost of work completed, B. The value of work performed, C. The anticipated total cost at project completion, or D. What it will cost to finish the job. The answer is C. After determined budget project, overall project budget is determined. However, based on actual results of the project, cost of remaining activities are forecasted, and the estimate at completion value shows the anticipated total cost at project completion based on the actual performance of the project. Question 2. The main focus of life cycle costing is to A. Estimate installation costs, B. Estimate the cost of operations and maintenance, C. Consider installation costs when planning the project costs, or D. Consider operations and maintenance costs in making project decisions. The answer is D. If you remember, lifecycle costing was saying that from making a decision over different alternatives, do not think only the cost that will occur in the project. Think overall cost of a product or item when you are making a decision. Therefore, you have to take operations and maintenance cost into account when making a decision about the product during procurement. Question 3. A rough order of magnitude, or ROM estimate, is made during which project management process group? A. Planning, B. Closing, C. Executing, or D. Initiating. The answer is D. Initiating. If you remember, rough order of magnitude was the widest range of estimates. Since we have the least information about the project in initiation process group, rough order of magnitude is used at this stage. Budget estimate was the second range of estimates, and it was done in planning. And the last one, definitive estimate, was the narrowest range of estimates, and it was done later in the project once things become clearer. Question 4. A Schedule Performance Index, or SPI, of 0.75 means A. Project is over budget, B. Project is ahead of schedule, C. Project is progressing at 75% of the rate originally planned, or D. Project is progressing at 25% of the rate originally planned. The answer is C. Project is progressing at 75% of the rate originally planned. A is irrelevant because SPI is a Schedule Performance Index. We cannot derive any conclusion about budget performance of the project with this index. B is not correct because SPI is less than 1, and therefore the project is behind schedule. And D says that you've completed 25% of the work that you have originally planned, so it's not correct. The correct answer here is C, because an SPI of 0.75 means you've completed 75% of your work that you've originally planned. Question 5. A cost baseline is an output of which cost management process? A. Estimate activity resources, B. Estimate costs, C. Determine budget, or D. Control costs. The answer is C. Determine budget process. Remember that cost estimations for each work package for each activity were done in estimate costs process, and these estimations were being aggregated in determine budget process in order to find the overall estimate for the project. Therefore, cost baseline is output of the determine budget process. Question 6. Your cost forecast shows that you'll exceed your planned budget at the end of your project. Which action should you take? A. Eliminate risks in estimates and re-estimate. B. Meet with the sponsor for extra funding. C. Cut quality. Or D. Decrease scope. The answer is A. Eliminate risks in estimates and re-estimate. First, you have to check whether there are any upcoming risks in your project. because a risk you identified at the earlier phases of the project might have been eliminated, or the impact of the risk might have been reduced. For example, if there are reserves that you planned in the planning phase of your project in order to accommodate a risk when it occurs later in your project, and if probability of that risk has been eliminated, you won't need that reserve anymore, and you can use that funding in the project. Therefore, A is the first and best choice here. The three other options are the last choices that we have to think about in such a scenario. Question 7. Early in the life of your project, you're having a discussion with the sponsor about what estimating technique should be used. You want a form of expert judgment, but the sponsor argues for analogous estimating. It would be best to A. Agree to analogous estimating, as it is a form of expert judgment. B. Suggest life cycle costing. C. Determine why the sponsor wants such an accurate estimate. Or D. Try to convince the sponsor to allow expert judgment because it is typically more accurate. Here, the correct answer is A. Agree to analogous estimating, as it is a form of expert judgment. Since analogous estimating is a type of expert judgment, you can accept it. This is a tricky question. Question 8. A manufacturing project has an SPI of 0.89 and a CPI of 0.91. Generally, what is the best explanation for the reason of this situation? A. The scope was changed. B. A supplier went out of business and a new one needed to be found. C. Additional equipment needed to be purchased. Or D. A critical path activity took longer and needed more labor hours to complete. The answer is D. Because SPI is lower than 1 and CPI is lower than 1, so you are behind schedule and over budget. And the most probable reason for this is a critical path activity that took longer, which resulted to get behind at the schedule and needed more labor hours to complete. So you had to spend extra money, which resulted to go over budget in your project. Question 9. You provide a project cost estimate for the project to the project sponsor. He is unhappy with the estimate because he thinks the price should be lower. He asks you to cut 10% off the project estimate. What should you do? A. Start the project in order to not lose time and look for cost savings during the project. B. Meet with the estimators to cut 10% from their estimates. C. Inform the sponsor about which activities can be cut. And D. Add additional resources to project with low hourly rates. Here the answer is C. Inform the sponsor about which activities can be cut. Because you've built your scope baseline, you have built your schedule baseline, you've built your cost baseline, and during all these processes you've done estimations and planning, etc. If a sponsor asks you to cut the project estimates, this can only be done by reducing some activities or scope from the project. Therefore, C is the best choice here. Question 10. A project manager needs to analyze the project costs to find ways to decrease costs. It would be best if the project manager looks at A. Variable costs and fixed costs. B. Fixed costs and indirect costs. C. Direct costs and variable costs. Or D. Indirect costs and direct costs. Which one is the best choice? Here the answer is C. Direct costs and variable costs. If you remember, direct costs were the cost initiated directly with your project, so you can control them or you can decrease costs by taking actions on the direct costs. Variable costs were changing proportionally with the quantity of the resources you use, for example, materials or labor hours. Therefore, you can decrease direct and variable costs in your project. Fixed costs cannot be decreased. For example, even if you have 1 project resource or 5 project resources, you will need an office and the cost of office will be fixed. Fixed costs are typically cannot be decreased in projects. Indirect costs are not directly related with the project. For instance, taxes or management salary, etc. and these are not generally under the control of the project managers. Therefore, you cannot affect indirect costs and fixed costs in your project. Now, we have concluded the cost management knowledge area. In the next section, we'll be going over quality management knowledge.